It's time. We need to talk about Sidney Powell, aka the Kraken. So, for those of you who are unaware, uh, in 2020, when all of the conspiracism was afoot about Donald Trump and the election, etc., there was one of Donald Trump's lawyers who emerged alleging rampant voter fraud, uh, flawed voting machines, etc. And one of those lawyers, one of the loudest of these lawyers, was Sidney Powell, who got the nickname the Kraken for being absolutely batshit. And she had a day in court today, which we're gonna watch. We're gonna watch the full hearing, just 20 minutes long. But I think you'll all enjoy it because Sidney Powell pleads guilty. She pleads guilty to the crimes she is charged with in the Georgia case, and now she's being charged with a long list of crimes, actually. And, well, it seems like in the courtroom, she made the decision to flip on Donald Trump. She has officially flipped publicly. And that is only bad for everyone else involved in the Georgia case. Yeah, the Kraken went down to Georgia. She was looking for a deal to seal. She was in a bind because she was looking at time. She was willing to take a plea.
Has been accused under 23 SC 190-370, count 1 being conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties, and counts 2 through 6 being conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties, each of these charges being misdemeanor charges. The state's recommendation on those charges on 1 through 6 is 12 months to be served on probation. Each one of those counts to run consecutive to one another for a total of 6 years of probation. Conditions of probation is a $6,000 fine, restitution in the amount of $2,700 to the state of Georgia, an apology letter to the state of Georgia, the citizens of the state of Georgia, testify truthfully at all hearings.
Yeah, she's getting probation, chat. Now, guys, you know that if she's getting probation for how many crimes she was charged with? Let me just look up. How many crimes was Sidney Powell charged with? Of course, all of the stories are about today. Yeah. So she was charged. Well, she's pleading guilty to 6 of them. But originally, she was charged with. Do we have? I just want to see the indictment. I don't remember how many she was charged with. Damn. Oh well. Yeah, basically it went from felonies that she was being charged with to misdemeanors. She only had to have 6 of them on her record, and she's getting 6 years of probation and writing an apology and recorded a statement for the prosecutors and agreed to testify against her co-defendants at future trials. Oh god. Oh god, dude.
Trials involving.
Oh hey, yeah, she was charged with racketeering and 6 other counts. um, in order to keep the president in power. Yeah.
Defendants in this matter. No communication with co-defendants, witnesses, or media until all cases have been closed. As a special condition of probation, that the defendant must provide a recorded proffer, which I will tell the court that was done last night. So we do have that, and that has been satisfied. And also to provide any requested documents or evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in good faith prior to entering this plea. We did have that discussion with Ms. Powell and her.
It's 2 flips now. Honestly, it's it's definitely more than 2 flips. Kalaksha. Definitely more than 2, because we know that Rudy Giuliani took a sweetheart deal, like it's called a Queen for a Day deal, where he confessed everything and got immunity for it, for all of those things. And we know that those implicated Donald Trump. We know that I believe another person, like one of Trump's former attorneys, also flipped. There's some speculation, I think, that Mark Meadows has flipped on Trump. This is one of our first really solid, highly publicized flips. Like, I mean, it's at least at least 4 or 5 that we know of. But I'm guessing that there are going to be more being done behind closed doors that we just don't know of yet. They want to make sure that when Trump takes the stand, he is like gunned down from all sides, legally speaking. If you're coming for the king, you don't want to miss.
Attorney, and they do understand that they are to turn over documents to us, and they agreed to do such. Those are the conditions of the probated sentence, Judge.
And is there expected to be a request here to apply the First Offender Act?
Yes, there is, Your Honor. Part of the negotiation was first offender treatment. The fines is set forth by the government along with restitution. The letter of apology, which has already also been provided, along with the recorded proffer. The only other issue, which
also, while Sidney Powell is a ghoul and like an actual idiot, she is a lawyer and was one of Trump's lawyers, which means she knows a lot of stuff, chat.
I discussed with the government this morning is a similar issue that came up with Mr. Hall concerning the question of whether or not these offenses constitute crimes of moral turpitude. We were requesting the same treatment as Mr. Hall received. I understand the government can't really make those sorts of determinations, but will take no position with respect to whether any of these offenses, which are all misdemeanors, constitute crimes of moral turpitude.
Well, as I recall, in Mr. Hall's final disposition form, we included express wording to that effect at the request of both parties. Is that essentially what we're asking for here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
The state's leaving it up to the court, Your Honor. We're really not taking a position on that.
Okay. With the first offender, Mr. Rafferty, you're requesting immediate sealing?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you'll have to remind me, this being a misdemeanor first offender, do we need to impose a behavioral incentive date? And if so, what would that be? Or is that not necessary?
That it does not apply to misdemeanor probation, Judge.
Understood. And are there any issues here? Is this an Alford plea or a null of any kind?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Young, you can proceed.
Ms. Powell, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you shall give in this matter currently before the court shall be the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Also, just fun fact, Sidney Powell's prestigious legal career includes representing executives from Enron, and also Michael Flynn, who is like one of the crazy far right Trump guys who like goes around now in all of those QAnon conferences. So like, yes, even though Sidney Powell like was part of Trump's legal team for like a couple months, and they distanced themselves from her after her crazy on-air interviews, she did continue to meet with the president for months afterwards. So she at least had some window to look into their dealings, you know? What I'm gathering is it's legal to claim it was the most safe and secure election without evidence, but anything else, you're going to jail? No. Because people who say it's the most safe and secure election use evidence. The people who say it's not actually are like just find any information anathema to themselves. Like if you point out, hey, you know, fewer people committed fraud in the 2020 election than in like the last several elections combined, or like, you know, hey, like the amount of people who did fraud in the 2020 election you can count on one hand. Like, you know, people who think that widespread election fraud is an issue aren't going to believe that, but that's the truth. That's the actual truth. And frankly, the onus is on you to prove that more fraud occurred. If millions of people were committing fraud, that should be a pretty easy thing to prove. If one entity is, you know, spinning millions of votes out of thin air using, like, by manipulating machines, that should be a pretty easy thing to prove. And yet, it's not, because it's not happening. At least that's the most likely explanation. Unless you find proof of a huge Rube Goldbergian conspiracy. But you're not going to find proof of that. Because we live in the world we have and not a fantasy world.
Can you please state your true and correct legal name?
Sidney Catherine Powell.
And are you the Sidney Catherine Powell named in accusation 23 SC 190370?
I am.
And are you currently taking any medication or under the influence of any drugs or alcohol at this time?
No, I'm not.
Is there any medication that you should be taking that you have not taken that may affect your ability to understand these?
You know, they just had to add that one in there just for her because she called herself the Kraken.
Proceedings today.
No.
How old are you, ma'am?
Oh, gosh. 68, despite my astonishingly youthful countenance.
Got it. And what is the highest level of education that you have completed?
I have a Juris Doctorate degree.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes.
And
Thanks,
Mr. Rafferty,
Charlie.
have you had a chance to go over the guilty plea form with Ms. Powell?
I have.
And did you, when you went over the form with her, do you believe that she fully understand each and every aspect of that form?
I do.
Ms. Powell, do you understand the charges that are against you here today?
I do.
And Mr. Young, let me pause you there since we're on that subject. If we could,
Well, she's probably able to make jokes because she knows that she is avoiding significant jail time, which, by the way, with every person that flips, makes it less likely that other people who are facing the charges she was are going to be able to avoid jail time.
tender the plea form now as well,
Approach your honor.
of course.
Have you, just want to make sure. And Mr. Rafferty, you signed this along with your attorney, with your counsel?
I have.
Sorry, your client.
Yes, I have. May I approach your honor?
Of course. All right, thank you. And Ms. Powell, I've been handed a document that's titled Plea of Guilty Form. Is this your signature as well on the second page?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then do you understand that this is a negotiated plea, which means that your attorney and I have reached an agreement, or the state has reached an agreement as to the proposed sentence that will be made to the court?
I do.
Do you understand that the recommendation being made to the court?
Nova, unironically, we have Donald Trump on like probably over 50 charges already dead to rights. But every person who flips ups the number of charges by like 10. You know, like every single person who flips on him from here on out increases the number of charges we get him on. And I think he's close to like 100 charges or something like that.
As to this accusation on counts 1 through 6, that you be sentenced to 12 months of probation to run consecutive with one another.
I do.
Do you understand that the state is asking that a $6,000 fine be imposed, a restitution of $2,700 be paid to the state of Georgia, an apology letter be written to the citizens of the state of Georgia, that you truthfully testify at all hearings and proceedings and trials involving the co-defendants in this matter, and that you have no communication with co-defendants, media, or witnesses until this case has been completely closed against all defendants?
I do.
And do you understand as a special condition of this sentence that you are
You know, if I had had to put money on who would flip, actually wouldn't have put money on Sidney Powell. I thought like she was too kind of like crazy and was going to go down with the ship. But this is actually one of the savviest moves we've ever seen her make in the public eye.
to provide what you've already done, a recorded proffer to the state, and provide any documents and evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in a good faith prior to entering this plea.
I do.
And Judge, at this time, the state will enter into evidence what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1, which is the apology letter that Ms. Powell has already. And Ms. Powell, do you understand that this court does not have to follow the state's recommendation in this case?
I do.
And do you understand if the court chooses not to follow the state's recommendation, then you can withdraw your guilty plea and move forward with trial on the original indictment?
I do.
And do you understand that if
What the fuck was that? I think she touched the microphone as she walked by it.
you are currently on probation or parole, your probation or parole may be revoked based on entering this guilty plea?
Yes.
And do you understand that if you are placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate the law?
No, the audio did go wonky. I think it was from her like walking by the mic or bonking it or something like that.
Any way, or the government, or any special conditions of your probation that would subject your probation to being revoked for the balance that is remaining?
I understand.
And do you understand that you are not allowed to possess any firearms while you're on probation?
Oh, she has to be like, but I have like 5 in my house. I need to get rid of them.
Ms. Young, are you confident that that's accurate? Is this being a misdemeanor plea that doesn't involve domestic violence or I'm not aware of a prohibition under Georgia law that would prevent her from possessing a firearm while on misdemeanor probation.
Great. And Judge, I will candidly say I am not certain.
All right. Well, how about we alter that to say that this plea may affect your ability to possess a firearm?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Do you understand that, Ms. Powell, that this plea to misdemeanor probation may affect your ability to possess firearms?
Yes.
I'm gonna just back up a little bit. Mr. Rafferty, have you had an opportunity to go over the accusation with your client?
I have.
And have you both signed this accusation?
Yeah.
And do you waive any defects that may be contained within this accusation?
We so waive.
And have you advised Ms. Powell of the minimum and maximums for each of the charges within the accusation?
I have.
And Ms. Powell, you understand that the maximum that you could receive is 12 months to serve on each of the charges in the accusation.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that you're asking the court to sentence you under the First Offender Act.
That's correct.
And have you pled guilty or nolo to or ever been convicted of any felonies or misdemeanor in the state of Georgia or any other jurisdiction?
No.
And do you understand that if you are sentenced under the First Offender Act, has your attorney gone?
Oh, yeah, Nova, we know that Rudy Giuliani has already very likely flipped on Trump. We don't know that 100% for sure publicly yet, but we do know that Rudy Giuliani went in and took a queen for a day deal, where basically the premise of that is where you come in for one interview session with investigators, and you spill the beans. Everything that you say in that meeting involving your criminal activity is not prosecuted. which is only a deal they offer you if you're going to give them incredibly useful information. They don't give you that deal if you're giving them information about Sidney Powell. They give you that deal if you're giving them information they can use to prosecute the former president of the United States.
Over what that means and what that entitles.
Yes.
And do you understand that if you violate the terms of your first offender sentence or commit a new offense while on probation, your first offender status could be revoked, you could be adjudicated guilty, and you could be resentenced up to the maximum sentence for each charge in the accusation?
Yes.
Do you understand that if you successfully complete your probation under the First Offender Act and you are discharged, you can honestly say that you have never been convicted of these charges?
Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including mental health defenses, by entering this guilty plea?
Yes.
And do you understand that you would have 12 months from today's date in order to file a habeas corpus?
Yes.
And do you understand that unless counsel is substituted or permitted to withdraw, he will represent you until either the end of the term of court or 30 days from today's date, whichever is later?
That's fine. Yes.
And do you understand that you have until the last day of the current term of court to file a motion to withdraw your guilty plea?
Yes.
And you understand that that term ends on November 5th of 2023?
Yes.
And do you understand that any of the filings we just discussed must be filed by your...
Oh, Gamer G, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. If they put a wiretap on her and then Trump calls to see what she spilled on them. Oh, that'd be so fucking good.
counsel unless you are representing yourself?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up the right to a trial by jury?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to remain silent and not to incriminate yourself?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to confront witnesses that the state may bring to testify against you?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to assistance of counsel hired by you or to a court-appointed counsel if you cannot afford one at trial?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right of the presumption of innocence?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to have the charges against you proven beyond a reasonable doubt?
Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you're giving up the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after trial?
Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything in order to enter into this guilty plea?
Other than what is recited in the documents, no.
How do you plead to 5 counts of conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties and 1 count of conspiracy to commit criminal trespass?
Let me approach for a second. We changed, there's the trespass count was changed, so it's 6 counts. It's 6 counts of the first.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. I apologize. How do you
The Kraken has been tamed. The Kraken has been tamed.
plead to the 6 counts of conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties?
Guilty.
Do you understand that you may have a limited right to appeal, which I've gone over with you?
Yes.
I'm not sure I covered it all. Judge, if this case had gone to trial, the state would have shown that between the dates of December 1st of 2020 and January 7th of 2021, the defendant, Sidney Powell, along with several co-conspirators, entered into a conspiracy to intervene with the performance of election duties of co-defendant Misty Hampton, also known as Emily Misty
Finally, we have Sidney Powell under oath. We need the truth. Is the world flat? Are you a globe head, ma'am?
Hayes. At all times relevant to the conspiracy, Misty Hampton was the elections director for Coffee County, Georgia, and was subject to all duties imposed by Chapter 2 of Title 21 of OCGA. The purpose of the conspiracy was to use Misty Hampton's position to unlawfully access secure elections machines in Coffee County, Georgia. This conspiracy included the following objectives. One, to willfully tamper with electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines. Two, to cause certain members of the conspiracy who were not officers charged by law with the care of ballots and who were not persons entrusted by any such officer with the care of ballots for a purpose required by law to possess official ballots outside of the polling place. Three, to use a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of taking and appropriating information, data.
Oh no, Mike Pence absolutely subverted the entire plan. Like if he had provided the pretext for like the January 6ers to think that they were legitimate, following their storming of the Capitol, it like MAGA America would have like taken up arms and like done like a second civil war.
And software, the property of Dominion Voting Systems Corporation. Four, to use a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of removing voting data and Dominion Voting Systems Corporation data from said computer. Five, to use a computer with the intention of examining personal voter data with knowledge that such examination was without authority. Each of these constituted attempts to interfere with, hinder, and delay Missy Hampton in the performance of her election duties. In furtherance of these conspiracies, the defendant entered into a contract.
Honestly, Pence's cowardice and looking out for number one nature kind of saved us all, really. Like if he had had slightly more ambition in the MAGA camp, he would have done it. If he had thought slightly more that he would have gotten away with it, he would have done it. You know?
With Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fulton County, Georgia, and delivered a payment to Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fulton County, Georgia, and caused employees of Sullivan Strickler LLC to travel from Fulton County, Georgia to Coffee County, Georgia for the purpose of accomplishing the objectives of this conspiracy. These were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. The data taken from Coffee County, Georgia was distributed to members of the conspiracy and unknown persons in Georgia and elsewhere. That would be the factual basis for the.
Oh, it's not a good reason to make him president. I'm just saying, like, I mean, our democracy was really far less secure than people kind of assume, you know? Like January 6th is kind of like both like a huge historical moment, but also kind of a big joke. And, well, like, I'm not saying he should be president. I'm just saying, like, damn, we came close.
The charges in this case, the state has looked at Mrs. Powell's background. She does not have any prior convictions being misdemeanors or felonies. And at this time, the state will give to the court the signed accusation.
I'm not going to lie. All of this is very satisfying.
Anything else,
to me.
Ms. Young?
And Judge, I would just like to add, the restitution will go to the Secretary of State for the cost that was incurred for having to replace the equipment in Coffee County. It will provide payment and will provide payment information to the probation office.
She has to pay for more voting machines. Oh, she actually has to pay for the voting machines that she's been railing against for like the last several years. That's amazing.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Rafferty.
May I be seated, Judge?
Sir, anything you wanted to add?
No, you're wrong.
Okay.
Other than, as I mentioned, I'm not sure if it was in the formal signed plea by Ms. Powell, but reiterating what we've already discussed, she's pleading to misdemeanors. The indictment that was filed against her will be dismissed. She will get first offender treatment, and we will have the language in there concerning crimes of moral turpitude.
All right, Ms. Powell, I just have a few questions for you. Do you understand the nature of the charges that have been reaccused and that you would be pleading guilty to today?
I do, sir.
And you've heard all the rights that the state has gone through that you would waive by going forward with this plea. Do you still wish to waive those rights?
I do.
And are you pleading guilty today because you agree that there is a sufficient factual basis, that there are enough facts that support this plea of guilty?
I do.
Mr. Rafferty, are you satisfied your client is competent in understanding that the plea is voluntary, and that there is a sufficient factual basis for entering this plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
I agree and find that there is a sufficient factual basis, and I find this plea of guilty to be knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently entered. There's been a request that this sentence be entered under the First Offender Act, and the court will.
I do hope whoever her lawyer is gets paid so much money for this case, because honestly, the fact that he got Sidney Powell off of all people, the Kraken herself, avoiding jail time, that's incredible. She was up there in front of everybody right next to Rudy Giuliani while he was leaking his black brain goo all over the place.
Will approve that request, withhold adjudication. But I must notify you, Ms. Powell, that you're not allowed to withdraw your plea simply because you do not comply with the terms of the sentence. And the terms of that sentence would be as recommended by the parties. On count 1, conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties, the sentence would be 12 months probation. And counts 2 through 6 would also be 12 months probation consecutive to each other and to count 1 for a total term of essentially 6 years probation, but we're going to translate that into months for the sentence sheet. Special conditions would include a $6,000 fine with $1,000 for each count, restitution to be paid in the amount of $2,700 to the Georgia Secretary of State's office. You are to have written a letter, which you've already satisfied. You're also to provide a recorded proffer with the state, which you've already satisfied. You're to testify truthfully against any and all co-defendants in this matter at any upcoming proceedings. You are not to have any communication with any witness, any co-defendant, or any member of the media concerning the facts or circumstances of this case. And you're to provide all documents to the district attorney's office as requested and relevant to this case. Again, Ms. Young, I would ask if you could provide the state's recitation of the exact phrasing of these, and we'll make sure that's reflected in the final disposition form. In order to make this sentence consistent with Mr. Hall, I do believe it would be appropriate, and I'm willing to include the language involving moral turpitude, although that language being included on the sentence form may not ultimately have any effect on the entities responsible for actually determining that. Are there any other express conditions and special conditions, Ms. Young, that you would like to see reflected on this sentence?
I think you covered, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Rafferty, is there anything else that you think needs to be on the record today? Ms. Young, do you use the state?
Oh, yeah, no, CN, no, like 100%, 10,000%. This is the smartest move she could have made, because she was definitely someone who was in the know enough to be used as some sort of patsy or scapegoat, but like, I'm surprised she's saving her ass at this juncture.
Have an announcement regarding the indictment in this case?
Yes, Your Honor, the state will be entering an all-pros order on indictment number 23 SC 188947 as it applies to Ms. Powell.
All right, well, upon being provided a copy of that motion, I will sign it and the charges in the indictment will be dismissed. All right, if there's nothing else, then we will conclude this and be off the record. Good luck, Ms. Powell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Oh, God.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
We got him, boys. We got him, boys. Yeah, again, yet another piece falls into place in the inevitable downfall of Donald Trump. I loved your little dance. I got moves.